It was supposed to be a regular Sunday, the kind where the coffee is warm, the choir sings like angels, and families sit close in their favorite pews. Pastor Jenkins had announced a special weekend retreat for church members in the peaceful town of Greenville, Tennessee. Families from the congregation were invited to spend 3 days together praying, singing, and bonding. Among those attending were Daniel and his wife, Marie Harper, the couple known for their devotion to the church and each other. Daniel was a quiet man in his late 30s, an auto mechanic with strong hands and a calm heart. Marie, a music teacher, often led the worship songs with her soft voice. They had no children, but everyone said they looked like two halves of the same soul. So when they arrived together at the rustic church camp, no one suspected that by the end of the weekend, one of them would be dead. The trouble began Saturday night, just after dinner. The camp had organized a talent show. Kids performed skits, teenagers sang pop songs, and Marie was scheduled to lead the choir's final hymn. As she stepped up to the podium, a little boy in the crowd suddenly shouted, "Mommy!" The room went silent. Marie froze. The boy, maybe 5 or 6 years old, had Marie's eyes. Light green, wide, filled with confusion and hope. An older woman sitting nearby rushed to hush him, but the damage was done. Daniel looked at Marie and then at the boy, and something inside him shifted. Marie quickly smiled and pretended not to hear. But Daniel wasn't fooled. He felt cold all over. That boy, he had Marie's eyes and her exact dimpled smile, the same gap between his front teeth. After the choir's song ended, Daniel quietly slipped away from the group. He needed answers. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Daniel went back to the main building. He found the church guest list in Pastor Jenkins' office and read through the names until he found it. Mrs. Clarissa Jones, guest of Marie Harper. She had registered with 2 children, Ethan Jones, 6, Lily Jones, 3. Daniel stared at the names. Jones? Who the hell was Jones? He didn't sleep that night. The next morning, he followed Marie as she left early for breakfast prep, but she didn't go to the kitchen. She went behind the cabins, to the woods. There, Daniel watched as Marie hugged the same boy and a small girl. The older woman from last night was there too. He heard her whisper, "I'm sorry I haven't been around. I promise I'll see you again soon." The woman, Clarissa, responded quietly, "They miss you. You can't keep doing this." Daniel felt like the ground had disappeared beneath him. Back in their cabin, he said nothing. Marie acted like nothing had happened. But Daniel's silence was different now. Sharp, dangerous. He spent the whole day avoiding her eyes, smiling when spoken to, but burning inside. That night, Marie never returned to the cabin. At 5:46 a.m., a camper walking by the lake found her body, face down in the water, her neck bent at an unnatural angle. There were bruises around her arms and red marks on her face. Her wedding ring was missing. The sun had barely risen when the first police cars pulled into the quiet church camp. The calm morning air was now filled with whispers, sirens, and crying voices. Yellow tape was stretched around the lake, and a group of campers gathered near the chapel, shivering in their pajamas, some still holding coffee mugs. Detective Julia Lane arrived just before 7 a.m. She stepped out of her silver unmarked car, dressed in a black blazer and dark jeans, with a notepad already in her hand. Tall, sharp-eyed, and in her early 40s, Lane was known for solving cold cases no one else could touch. She didn't smile much, not because she was mean, but because she saw too much pain in her line of work. She walked straight to the crime scene. A young officer greeted her. "Detective Lane, victim's name is Marie Harper. Found just after 5. We've got a few early witness statements. Husband reported her missing around 3 a.m. Said she never came back to their cabin." Lane nodded. "Anyone touch the body?" "No, ma'am. EMS confirmed she was already dead when they arrived." Lane stepped closer to the lake. Marie's body had already been covered with a white sheet, but Lane crouched beside it as the sheet was gently pulled back. The victim's skin was pale, lips slightly blue. Her wrists were bruised, scratch marks on her arms, mud on her feet. The medical examiner noted blood under her fingernails and signs of blunt force trauma to the head. Lane stood and looked around. "Where's the husband?" "Daniel Harper. He's inside the chapel, with the pastor." Lane walked slowly to the chapel. She took in every detail along the way. The dirt path, the cabins, the kitchen building, the group of curious onlookers. She liked to observe before asking questions. Inside the chapel, Daniel sat in the front pew, elbows on his knees, face in his hands. He looked devastated. Pastor Jenkins sat beside him, offering soft words of comfort. Lane waited a few seconds before stepping forward. "Mr. Harper, I'm Detective Julia Lane. I'm very sorry for your loss, but I have to ask you a few questions." Daniel lifted his head. His eyes were red and swollen. "I understand," he whispered. "Can you tell me when you last saw your wife?" "Last night, around 11 p.m. She said she wanted to walk alone and clear her head. I thought she just needed some air. I waited up. I fell asleep. Woke up at 3 a.m. and she still wasn't back. I looked around for her, checked with the pastor. No one had seen her. I called the police. Was that unusual for her? To take late walks alone?" "Sometimes," Daniel said, "but never this long. Never without telling me." Lane made a note. "Did anything seem different about her yesterday?" Daniel hesitated. His eyes shifted. "Yes," he said slowly. "There was this moment during the choir performance. A child in the crowd. He called her Mommy. She pretended not to hear him, but I saw her face. She was shaken. And later I saw her hugging those same kids behind the cabins. Did you confront her about it?" "No," he said. "I wanted to, but I didn't. I was angry, confused." Lane's eyes narrowed. "Do you know who the woman with the children was?" "She signed in as Clarissa Jones. She's not from our town. That's all I know." "Did your wife ever mention her before?" Daniel shook his head. Lane nodded and stood. "Thank you, Mr. Harper. We'll talk again soon." Outside the chapel, Lane pulled her phone and called her team. "Find Clarissa Jones. Interview her immediately. I want to know everything about her connection to Marie Harper." By noon, the forensics team had gathered evidence from the lake and cabin. They collected Marie's cell phone from her purse. It was dry, meaning she didn't take it with her. Lane flipped through the messages. Nothing strange, just regular text between Marie and Daniel. Until 2 days ago. That's when the messages got quiet, but there was one number saved as CJ. The last message said, "I miss them, but I can't tell Daniel. Not now. Maybe after the retreat." Lane looked at the officer beside her. "Run a trace on this number. I want Clarissa found before sundown." Later that day, Clarissa was located at a nearby motel, packing her bags. She was brought in for questioning. Lane met her in the small camp office, now converted into a temporary interview room. Clarissa looked nervous, but not surprised. She had short hair, wide shoulders, and a calm, careful voice. "Did you know Marie Harper?" Lane asked. Clarissa nodded. "We were close. Years ago." "How close?" Clarissa looked away. "We were in a relationship. It was brief. Marie got scared. She left. Said she couldn't live a double life. She married Daniel later. And the kids?" Clarissa's eyes filled with tears. "They're hers, ours. She gave birth to Ethan 6 years ago. Then Lily. We never told anyone. She wanted to keep it secret. She visited every few months, paid support under a fake name." Lane leaned back. "Did Daniel know?" "I don't think so. But he saw us talking yesterday. I saw his face. He knew something was wrong." "Where were you between 11 p.m. and 5 a.m.? "In my cabin. With the kids. You can check with the camp staff." "We will," Lane said. As Clarissa was escorted out, Lane turned to her notebook. The case was opening up faster than expected. A hidden relationship, secret children, a possible motive. But she had a gut feeling there was more. Something darker. And she knew Daniel Harper was still hiding something. Detective Julia Lane sat at a small folding table in the corner of the church camp's kitchen, flipping through the initial forensic reports. The lake water where Marie Harper was found didn't show signs of drowning, which confirmed what the medical examiner had suspected. The TOE cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head, not accidental. She had also been struck multiple times and had defensive wounds, suggesting she fought back. At 7:42 a.m., her assistant, Officer Lee, entered the room holding a plastic evidence bag. "You're going to want to see this," he said, placing the bag on the table. Inside was a necklace, a small gold cross on a thin chain, slightly bent and covered in mud. "Where'd you find this?" Lane asked, sitting up straighter. "Half buried behind cabin 12. The camp caretaker said it's been vacant since the retreat started." Lane recognized the necklace. It matched one Marie was wearing in old photos from Daniel's Facebook page. "Get forensics on it and pull the camp's cabin log. I want to know who had access to cabin 12 in the past week." Officer Lee nodded and left. Lane turned her attention back to Daniel Harper. 9:10 a.m. Second interview with Daniel Harper. Daniel sat across from Lane again, this time at a smaller private office near the counselor's quarters. He looked even more tired than before, his hands shaky, his voice hoarse. "I need to ask about cabin 12, Lane began. Daniel blinked. "I don't know anything about that cabin. Your wife's necklace was found behind it. You're sure you never went there?" He shook his head. "Number I was in our cabin all night. Anyone to confirm that?" "No," he admitted. "I was alone." Lane leaned forward. "Clarissa told us everything, Daniel. About the children, about Marie's visits, about the money." His mouth tightened. "I didn't know. Not until yesterday. Be honest with me." "What happened after the choir performance?" Daniel closed his eyes. "I followed her." "Where?" "She went behind the cabins. I saw her hugging those kids. I heard the boy call her mommy. She saw me. I walked away before she could speak. I didn't want to hear it. I went back to the chapel. I stayed until the end." Lane gave him a long look. "Then what?" "We argued in the cabin. She begged me to understand. Said she did it to protect me. To protect our marriage. I was angry, but I left. I needed air. I walked around the camp for an hour. I didn't see her after that." "You didn't follow her again?" "No," Daniel said quickly. Lane stared at him. She could see the fear, the cracks in his story, but nothing solid. Not yet. 11 a.m. Discovery in the woods. Two campers walking near the forested edge of the campground spotted something strange. Broken branches and scattered bits of fabric about 100 feet from the cabins. Officers followed the trail and found what looked like a small clearing, shielded by trees. Blood was on the ground. A large rock with dark stains lay nearby. Lane arrived minutes later. "This could be our murder site," she said softly. Close by, an officer lifted a torn gray hoodie. Lane recognized it from the camp's sign-in photo of Clarissa. But the blood on it didn't match Marie's. It was fresh, and someone else had been hurt. Lane's eyes scanned the clearing. Two sets of shoe prints, one large, one smaller. A struggle, a flight. Back at the station tent, Lane called Clarissa again for questioning, but this time, she didn't answer her phone. An officer checked her cabin. It was empty. The children were gone. Her things were packed. The beds were cold. "She's running," Lane muttered. 2:15 p.m. Surveillance footage review. The camp's only camera was outside the main office, with a wide-angle view of the entry road. Lane reviewed the footage from midnight to dawn. At 4:02 a.m., a figure exited the tree line near the office. A woman, limping slightly. She stopped under the street lamp. Enough for Lane to freeze the frame. It was Clarissa. Her hoodie was torn. Her left arm hung limp at her side. Her face was bruised. She looked straight at the camera. Her eyes were wide with fear. Then she disappeared into the shadows again. Lane played it back. "She wasn't the attacker," she murmured. "She was attacked. She saw something. Maybe even tried to stop it." 4 p.m. The phone unlocked. Marie's phone had been password locked. With a court order, Lane's tech team finally cracked it. They dug into deleted messages and recovered a draft email addressed to Clarissa, dated 2 days before her death. "Clarissa, I can't keep lying to Daniel. He deserves to know. I can't keep pretending. Not in front of God. I'm going to tell him this weekend. If he hates me for it, I'll understand. But the kids deserve to know the truth. I'll stand by you no matter what happens." Lane felt the weight of the words. Marie had planned to come clean, to reveal everything to Daniel, and someone had wanted to stop her. 6:30 p.m. Officer Lee's update. "Detective Lane," Lee said, walking fast into the office. "We found Clarissa. She was hiding in an abandoned barn half a mile from the camp. with the children. She was injured, a fractured wrist, cuts on her back, and bruises across her neck. She was taken into custody and brought to the hospital for treatment. When Lane arrived, at the hospital, Clarissa was sitting upright in a gown, her eyes dark and hollow. "I didn't kill her," she said softly, before Lane even spoke. "I believe you," Lane replied. "But I need to know what you saw." Clarissa took a shaky breath. "I followed her that night. After your talk, she came to me and said she was going to tell him. We walked by the lake. I begged her to wait, said it wasn't safe. She said she had to be honest. I left her there. And then I came back. I heard shouting in the woods. I ran. I saw Daniel. He had her by the arm. He was crying. She was screaming. He pushed her. She fell. He grabbed a rock. I ran toward them, tried to pull him off. He hit me. I don't remember what happened after that. I woke up near the barn. I ran with the kids." Lane stood in silence. She had what she needed. Now, all that was left was the arrest. It was just after 7 a.m. when Detective Julia Lane stood in front of Cabin 6, the morning sun casting long shadows across the dewy campgrounds. Inside, Daniel Harper was alone, unaware that everything he tried to bury had come to the surface. She gave a quick nod to Officer Lee. He knocked on the cabin door sharply. "Daniel Harper? Open up. We need to speak with you." Inside, muffled sounds stirred. The creak of a bed, footsteps, hesitation. Finally, the door opened. Daniel stood in sweatpants and a gray hoodie, eyes bloodshot, lips pressed in a thin line. "Is this about Clarissa?" he asked hoarsely. "No," Lane said. "This is about Marie." Daniel sat on the edge of the bed, hands on his knees, breathing heavily. "You're under arrest for the murder of Marie Harper," Lane said, her voice calm but firm. His eyes widened. "Wait, what?" No, you don't understand. You have the right to remain silent." "I didn't kill her," he shouted, standing. Officer Lee stepped in immediately, cuffing him. Lane didn't flinch. "Then you'll have your day in court." Daniel sat across the table, wrists uncuffed but his hands clenched tight. His lawyer sat beside him, stone-faced. "You say you didn't kill your wife," Lane began. "But we have your wife's necklace behind cabin 12. Clarissa identified you as the man who struck her. Your shoe prints match those found at the murder scene. And your wife's phone contains an email where she says she was going to tell you the truth, the same night she died." Daniel shook his head slowly. "She was going to ruin everything. Is that a confession?" "No," he snapped. "It's just the truth. I loved her. But after I saw her hugging those kids, I couldn't think straight. She lied to me. For years, I gave her everything, and she gave me half a family." "What happened in the woods?" Lane asked softly. Daniel stared at the table. "She followed me. Tried to explain. I told her I was done. I walked off. She came after me, said I was overreacting. She kept saying she loved me, that the kids didn't change that. I lost it. I pushed her. She hit the ground, hard. She wasn't moving." Lane waited. "I didn't mean to," he said, voice cracking. "But when I saw her trying to get up, I panicked. I didn't know what to do. Clarissa showed up, screaming. I hit her with a rock to shut her up. Then I ran." He looked up at Lane, tears streaking down his face. "I wasn't trying to kill anyone. I just wanted it all to stop." The forensics team confirmed everything. The blood at the murder scene belonged to both Marie and Clarissa. The rock found in the clearing matched the wound on Marie's skull. A partial fingerprint on the necklace belonged to Daniel. The footprint impressions, one male, one female, confirmed the struggle. It all matched Clarissa's story. Reporters crowded in front of the county police station. Cameras flashed, microphones pointed. Detective Lane stood behind the podium, flanked by officers. "This morning, Daniel Harper was arrested and charged with the murder of his wife, Marie Harper," she began. "The investigation is still ongoing, but we can confirm that Mr. Harper acted alone. His motive appears to be rooted in personal betrayal and emotional instability." A reporter raised her hand. "Is Clarissa being charged?" "Number evidence confirms she was a secondary victim and a witness who cooperated fully with our investigation." Another reporter asked, "What happens to the children?" "They're currently under the care of Clarissa's relatives," Lane replied. We're working with child services to ensure their safety and stability. Back in her office, Lane placed the thick Harper file into the closed drawer. She sat back in her chair, exhausted but clear-headed. The camp had returned to normal, or as normal as it could. Parents came to pick up children early. Counselors avoided speaking about the tragedy. Clarissa, still recovering, left town with her children that afternoon. She never looked back. As for Daniel, he would face a life sentence for second-degree murder and aggravated assault. His trial was set for the fall. The Harper case serves as a grim reminder of the thin line between love and violence. Daniel Harper was a respected church member, a husband, a man of routine. But under pressure, under betrayal, something broke. The lie wasn't the crime. The silence after the truth was. Marie Harper died not because she was wrong, but because someone she loved could not handle the truth. And in the woods that night, the truth bled out beneath the trees. The courtroom buzzed with tension. Wooden benches filled with reporters, townspeople, and silent observers waiting to hear the truth in a courtroom instead of whispered rumors at church or the grocery store. Detective Julia Lane sat in the front row behind the prosecution table. Her case was strong, but trials had a way of twisting facts under pressure. The defendant, Daniel Harper, was led in wearing a dark blue suit. He looked smaller, paler, thinner than he had months ago when he stood on the church platform, smiling beside his wife. But today there was no choir, no pulpit, and no Marie. Only lawyers, evidence, and judgment. Judge Marilyn Grant entered, and all rose. "Be seated. Court is now in session. The state of Pennsylvania versus Daniel Harper." The prosecutor, Assistant District Attorney Lewis Moore, rose. He was calm, confident, and carried a folder filled with notes. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," he began, "what you will hear over the coming days is not just a story of a marriage gone wrong. It is the story of a man who let pride and rage become more powerful than love or reason. Daniel Harper discovered a part of his wife's past she had kept hidden, a family she had before they met. Instead of speaking to her, understanding her, or even leaving her, he chose to end her life. He struck her, left her for dead, and nearly killed a young girl who tried to help." He paused. "We will show you witness testimony, forensic reports, and physical evidence. And by the end of this trial, there will be no doubt that Daniel Harper is guilty of murder." Then it was the defense attorney's turn. A slender man in his late 40s, Kevin Blake, stood and adjusted his tie. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "what happened in those woods is tragic, no doubt. But we are not here to decide if Mr. Harper made mistakes. We are here to decide if he committed murder. The prosecution will try to convince you this was intentional, but we will show you that what happened was a terrible accident, not a calculated act. Daniel didn't plan this. He didn't prepare. He reacted, and he ran because he panicked. We ask only that you listen carefully and remember the difference between a man with a plan and a man who snapped." Clarissa took the stand. She looked fragile but determined. A long scar ran along the side of her forehead where Daniel had hit her with a rock. The courtroom grew still as she began to speak. "I was supposed to meet Marie that night. She sent me a message asking to talk. She said she was finally going to tell Daniel about us, about the kids. We'd agreed it was time." "What happened next?" the prosecutor asked. "I heard shouting in the woods. I followed the sound and saw Marie on the ground, and Daniel was standing over her. He looked wild, scared. I yelled his name. He turned and ran at me. I didn't even have time to scream. He hit me with something. Hard. I blacked out." Her voice cracked. "When I woke up, she was gone." Kevin Blake stood. "Miss Tate, is it true that your relationship with Marie was kept secret from Daniel for years?" "Yes," Clarissa said clearly, "because she was afraid of what he'd do. Isn't it possible, then, that he was in emotional shock? That he didn't mean to hurt her?" Clarissa's lip trembled. He could have walked away. Instead, he made sure she couldn't. Next came Dr. Evan Price, the lead medical examiner. "Marie Harper died from blunt force trauma to the skull," he said. "The injury was consistent with a blow from a medium-sized rock. There were defensive wounds on her arms, suggesting she tried to protect herself. Could her death have been accidental? The defense asked. Unlikely, Price answered. The force used was deliberate. That kind of injury takes intention. The courtroom fell silent as Ada Moore played an audio file, a voice message Marie had recorded the night of her death. It was shaky, rushed. Daniel, I need to tell you something important. I didn't mean to lie. I was just afraid. I have children. From before. They're here. And I want you to meet them. I love you. Please don't be angry. I just want to be honest from now on. The recording ended. Daniel buried his face in his hands. Detective Lane, Blake began, you've built a case around Daniel's motive. But motive doesn't equal murder. Did you find any pre-planning? Any emails, texts, or journals where he said he wanted to hurt Marie? No, Lane admitted, but we found the aftermath, the blood, the prints, the weapon. So no proof of premeditation, no proof of planning, Lane agreed, but plenty of proof of guilt. Judge Grant called the session closed for the day. We will resume tomorrow with additional evidence and testimonies. Court is adjourned. As the crowd filtered out, Lane looked at Daniel one last time. He wasn't the man from the church picnic anymore. He was a broken man trying to survive the truth. And the truth in this case was heavier than he could carry. Morning broke cold and gray. The courthouse stood solemn under thick clouds, and inside, the trial of Daniel Harper entered its most decisive phase. Detective Julia Lane arrived early, clutching her case file. She'd sat through dozens of trials in her career, but this one felt personal. Not because she knew the Harpers, but because she'd watched the truth come undone piece by piece, and now it was time to tie it all together. Inside, Daniel sat with his shoulders hunched, eyes sunken. His lawyer whispered something to him, but he didn't react. His gaze was fixed on the floor. The gallery was full. Clarissa Tate sat quietly beside two of Marie's children, who'd been flown in under protection. The media were present in full force, every local station and some national outlets, waiting for a soundbite that would become tomorrow's headline. ADA Lewis Moore stood. Your Honor, the prosecution calls Amanda Reeves, senior technician from Verizon's Digital Forensics Unit. Amanda took the stand and explained the logs retrieved from both Daniel's and Marie's phones. The critical moment? A call made from Daniel's phone to Marie's, minutes after the church program ended, and one that Marie never answered. Using cell tower triangulation, we confirmed Daniel's phone moved from the church parking lot to the wooded area behind the community center, where Marie's body was later discovered. The defense objected, circumstantial. He could have been walking. The judge allowed it. The jury will determine its weight. Ada Moore stood in front of the jury with a calm authority. Daniel Harper was not just angry, he was outraged, humiliated. He thought he knew everything about his wife. When he discovered her secret, that she had another family, he didn't respond with understanding. He responded with violence. The evidence is overwhelming. His fingerprints were on the rock. His shoe prints matched those near the body. Marie was trying to tell the truth, and he silenced her forever. He paused. This isn't just about murder. It's about betrayal and how far one man went to erase it. Kevin Blake stepped forward. Yes, Daniel was shocked. Wouldn't you be? You're married for 10 years and suddenly your wife brings children you've never met to a church event, tells you she's been lying to you all along. It doesn't make him a killer. The prosecution wants to turn panic into murder. But Daniel didn't plan this. He didn't bring a weapon. He didn't lure her out. There was a confrontation. Tempers flared. What happened next was a tragedy, not premeditated homicide. He turned to the jury. Don't confuse emotional reaction with cold-blooded intent. Judge Grant addressed the jury directly. You are to consider whether the defendant committed the act with intent and knowledge. You must base your verdict only on the evidence presented, not on sympathy, not on speculation. And then it was time. The jury retired to the deliberation room. In the hallway, Clarissa cried silently. Daniel sat alone, barely blinking. Lane watched them both from a distance. An hour passed, then 2, then 4. Inside the deliberation room, the jurors argued. One woman believed Daniel had snapped and regretted it. Another man insisted that someone doesn't bash a person's head in by accident. The foreman pushed for calm. We have to follow the facts. That audio message. The blood. The expert testimony. Are we convinced beyond a reasonable doubt? Finally, at 6:13 p.m., a verdict was reached. The courtroom filled again. The jury entered, somber and tired. Daniel stood. His lawyer beside him stood. The judge asked for silence. Madam Foreperson, Judge Grant said, have you reached a verdict? Yes, Your Honor. Please read it. The foreperson cleared her throat. In the case of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania versus Daniel Harper on the charge of first-degree murder, we find the defendant guilty. A loud gasp erupted in the gallery. Daniel collapsed into his chair, expression blank. Clarissa broke down in tears, holding her children close. Ada Moore nodded slowly. Lane let out the breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. Reporters crowded Ada Moore and Detective Lane. This was a difficult case, Moore said, but the evidence spoke for itself. Marie Harper deserved truth, not death. We're satisfied justice was served. A reporter turned to Lane. Detective, was this one of the hardest cases you've worked? Lane paused. It wasn't the hardest, but it was the clearest lesson that even people who appear perfect in public can be hiding something dangerous inside. Daniel Harper sat alone in his cold gray cell. The fluorescent light above him buzzed softly. Since the verdict, he hadn't spoken to anyone. No visitors, no calls. Just the same stale food and the echo of other inmates down the hall. He was waiting for sentencing now. Life in prison was almost certain, but one person wasn't done with him yet. Detective Julia Lane. She arrived with a sealed envelope in hand. A guard opened Daniel's cell and stepped aside. You got 5 minutes, the guard muttered. Lane walked in calmly, pulling a metal chair across from him. Daniel looked thinner, hollow. His eyes didn't move from the floor. I came because we found something new, Lane said, placing the envelope on the table. Daniel didn't respond. You see, we never found Marie's phone, just her SIM card. It had been flushed, destroyed. But tech's a funny thing. It backs itself up, especially when it syncs to the cloud. She opened the envelope and slid a few printed photos toward him. You remember these? Daniel finally looked up. The photos showed Marie sitting with 2 young children. One photo in particular stood out. Marie with one arm around a young girl, the other around a woman who wasn't her friend Clarissa, but someone older. Someone Daniel recognized. That's her mother, he muttered. Yes, that woman is Deborah Simmons, the grandmother of Marie's secret children. She lives in Baltimore. Lane leaned in. You thought Marie was hiding an affair, hiding another life. But she wasn't. Those kids, they weren't hers. They were her nieces. Marie had helped raise them after her sister's death. The man you saw at the church, that wasn't her ex or lover. It was her brother-in-law. Daniel looked stunned. Broken? No, he whispered. She lied to me. She said it was more than that. She tried to tell you the truth, but your mind was already made up. You didn't ask questions. You acted, and now she's dead. Lane stood. Thought you should know. It wasn't what you thought it was. Daniel collapsed forward, head in his hands, but it was too late. The courtroom was silent as Daniel stood to hear his sentence. His attorney stood beside him, expression unreadable. Daniel Harper, Judge Grant said, for the murder of Marie Harper, you are hereby sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Daniel didn't flinch. He didn't cry. He just nodded. Clarissa was there, this time with Marie's nieces. One of them, the oldest, Jasmine, read a short statement. You killed someone who only ever wanted to help people. You killed someone who helped raise me when my mom died. You didn't just take her from us. You ruined every good memory we had left. Post-trial report. Final notes by Detective Julia Lane case. File MH-3372. Victim Marie Harper. Suspect Daniel Harper. Charge first-degree murder. Verdict guilty sentence. Life without parole. On February 22, 2025, Marie Harper was murdered behind the Grace Baptist Community Center following a church event. The suspect, her husband, Daniel Harper, believed she had been hiding a secret family. Further investigation revealed this belief was a tragic misunderstanding. The children belonged to Marie's late sister, and she was acting as a caregiver. Evidence included physical traces, digital records, and witness accounts. Though the motive was based on a false assumption, intent and action aligned to meet the standards of premeditated homicide. Justice was served in the eyes of the law, but nothing brings Marie back. Let this case stand as a warning. Assumptions can kill. The truth is always worth asking for before it's too late. Grace Baptist Church built a small memorial garden behind their center, the same place Marie lost her life. A stone bench sits under a maple tree with an inscription, "In loving memory of Marie Harper, a sister, a mother to many, a woman of quiet strength." Detective Lane visited once just to see it. She sat on the bench, looked up at the blue sky, and whispered a simple truth. Always ask, always listen.